Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, it is I am the one and only Silver the Hedgehog here, and I am Pac-Man here, and we are back for the likes of the Mexi Toys videos, as you probably expect at this point in time. So ladies and gentlemen, welcome back for some more of Let's Play of WarioWare, Get It Together for the Nintendo Switch. So, last time, we've basically managed able to win through Nintendo Classic stage as 9th, despite the fact that we are missing one more micro game. That's a shame really, because this is easily the best stage in the entire game. Same applies with the forms of any other WarioWare games, just because no matter what though, they brings us a lot of Nintendo references from time to time. And in addition to that, we also managed able to win through high-tech stage as Dr. Krogor, and overall we actually did that no problem, despite there are some mistakes here and there. But apart from those aside things though, we did that no problem, even though that, well, you know what I'm saying. So today, for this video, is that we're going to be able to continue things on throughout the forms of in the story mode. And here we go, on to the forms of fantasy, starting, well, Dribble and Spitz. In this case, the good old duo for trying to able to do some taxis and such. So because of that, yeah, let's jump right into this, shall we? Yeah, exactly. Because it's especially noticeable about the fact that we've almost at the halfway point in terms of story mode already. Well, because mind you, no matter what though, the entire length of story mode is going to be super duper short, no matter what. Well, despite the fact that we still have to able to try to find those specific micro games from time to time, but I suppose we should probably be able to get into more details about those, assumably we are able to actually continue proceedings for story mode. So, anyway, so it looks like no matter what though, we will be able to come across into Dribble and Spitz at some point, like for instance right now, and it looks like they're driving onto the taxi while hovering, so, and this is one of those emphasis about the fact no matter what though, if you try to play the game on 2-player mode, basically as you can tell, they did say I'm player 1 for Dribble, and I'm player 2 for Spitz. So this means, no matter what though, since we're going to be able to be using only one controller for ourselves, meaning we can only take control of Dribble, whilst if you do manage to able to have 2 controllers with you, either with the Switch Pro controller, or with the Joy-Con controller separately, one player can take control of Dribble, and then the other player can take control of Spitz. So as a result, the major differences between these two characters, which as you can see, Dribble can only shoot right, whilst compared to Spitz, only can shoot left. So because of that, that's the main changes when it comes to likely between the two, which that could be also applies for the other two duos, which we'll come across into it once we get to the second halfway point. To be more specifically, Junior forms of that specific story mode in mind. So, and as to be expected, we will be forced able to play as Dribble and Spitz, or Dribble or Spitz. So, relatively speaking though, is about the fact that we're able to go ahead and select quite a few characters. Like for instance, we're able to go for Dr. Krogor, and we'll go for Mona as well. So that'll be all set, and let's get to it with Fantasy Stage. So, here we go.
We'll show you the stars.
Oh yeah, there's also another thing I want to mention. I apologize for my commentary earlier, it's actually kind of awkward, but that's just mainly because I accidentally belched, which I know is incredibly gross, but that's just mainly because I've been eating too many packed dots. So, anyways, let's get to it with Fantasy Stage, and really? Dang it, I didn't get too fast enough to able to actually protect the planet Earth, while the aliens are trying to able to invade the entire planet, or and specifically Earth. So, anyways though, let's get to it with the forms of the Fantasy Stage, like I said earlier. So obviously it's filled to the brim with a lot of like, magicians or cutie stuff and pretty much anything else fantasy based. So nothing else to say about this, I guess. So, but even then no, despite the fact that it's been about 6 days ago since we've last played this game for sure, because obviously no matter what though, we're still going to be playing through this in the entire weekend department. So now, if you're probably wondering about the fact that what has been going on at this point, well, obviously if you couldn't tell already, is about the fact that today's day is of course the 13th of January today, in some cases in 2024 today. Naturally speaking, we've almost at the halfway point in terms of January already, before we move on to the second month in terms of the forms of 2024 so far. Well, we should probably save that particular topic once we're able to continue proceedings in terms of the forms of story mode for WarioWare Get It Together, because as it turns out, for Dribble and Spitz stage is that the entire stage background usually takes place into outer space, which technically speaking this wasn't exactly the first time around they've somehow explored into space, because that was technically WarioWare Gold, where basically though that Dribble and Spitz has managed able to experience space before, or perhaps even maybe I've lost count, because it's been a very long while since we've last played certain WarioWare games in the past. To be more specifically, when it comes to able to experience those games for our Let's Play department, you know? Yeah, I always thought about something like this, so even then no. Yeah, so it looks like we come across into a boss stage in Dribble and Spitz stage, so I wonder what this is going to bring us into. Well, for starters, it looks like we ended up in this aquarium kingdom or something like that, or in some cases we actually bump into King Triton or something like that. So yeah, I think for this particular boss micro game, what involves around is that we need to protect this particular creature, and then you have to able to like not to let King Triton just somehow caught him, and because of that, in this particular part right there, we need to able to jiggle or swing the key back and forth a little bit, and as a result, once the key reaches to the actual the padlock right there, then you should be able to free one of the citizens for the sake of the forms that fly. I don't know what these creatures are called, I have to be honest, but then once you try to save that particular creature, then obviously you will win. So, overall it's actually pretty easy though, because obviously no matter what though, we pretty much know exactly what we're supposed to do. So with that, I believe that pretty much does it for the sake of the forms of fantasy stage, for the sake of the forms of Dribble and Spitz. So, yep, and after that, since we've somehow completed 3 stages all in all for that particular segment, I believe this is where we get ourselves some bit of progression. So because of that, much like the forms of how it does it in WarioWare Inc. Minigame Mania, then obviously no matter what though, that we have to able to complete those stages before we continue our progressioning. So, makes obvious sense kind of thing about it, which also applies for WarioWare Smooth Moves, and you pretty much name the rest of it though. So, once again we are missing 8 micro games, so as a result we will be able to go back onto fantasy stage again, so hopefully we should be able to actually stumble across into the 8 remaining micro games. So, and this time around though, for the entire combination we'll go for this time what appears to be buddy forms of Wario, Young Cricket, and of course we're able to bring back Dribble as well. So because of that though, just in case we can able to actually show, you know, different character variety for the sake of certain stages, you know. So, as I mentioned this before, is about the fact that there's quite a lot of stuff we're like able to point things out, because obviously, like I said before, today's day is of course is the 13th of January today, in some cases in 2024 today. There's quite a lot of things we can able to discuss upon today. First of all, it's about the fact that it looks like by that time until next Wednesday or something like that, it looks like we're about to be getting not 1, but 2 Game Boy Advance games are about to be releasing for the sake of the forms of the Nintendo Switch Online Expansion Pack. And what these 2 games are exactly? Well, there are both RPGs, and for the sake of convenience, there are Golden Sun as well as Golden Sun The Lost Age. So because of that, and I think fundamentally speaking though, is that both of those games will be releasing on NSO Expansion Pack until the 17th of January in this year in particular. So because of that, oh yeah, kind of thinking about it, because that's going to be roughly the exactly same time as when the 10th anniversary of the UK's release of Mario Party Island Tour Oh yeah, I was thought about that actually, because I know for certain for one thing is about the fact that it's been a very long while since we've last played Mario Party Island Tour. Well, that's mainly because we've already 100% everything in that game, especially that, well, you know, we've done all of the actual Street Pass features and stuff like that, and also not to mention those about the fact that the replayability seems to be a little bit more lacking, you know. Yeah, which is especially concerning for the fact that that's pretty much the obvious point about the fact that certain NT-Cube Mario Party titles, at least from the get-go anyway, for the beginning portion anyway, that the replayability seems to be a little bit too small. But regardless of everything else though, is about the fact that we'll pretty much have to talk more about it. Assuming of course, no matter what though, if Sonic and Knuckles are both about to be going back onto Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze at some point, so, but I digress. So, oh, it looks like it's now Wario's turn for the sake of the forms of this boss micro game we're about to be going back into. So, I suppose there's another thing I should probably want to explain about this, potentially speaking though, is that, kind of thing about it though is about the fact that when it comes to the forms of, certain DVD updates release dates, is that there's actually quite a lot I did somehow found out for the sake of the forms of not only for its DVD release date updates, but also with the forms of Blu-ray and even 4K Ultra HD Blu-rays as well. Like for example, is that we actually got ourselves a confirmation about the forms of the actual DVD release dates for the sake of the forms of Trolls 3, or to be more specifically, Trolls Band Together. Obviously that particular film is going to be releasing on DVD and Blu-ray, as well as the 4K Ultra HD Blu-ray, until the 22nd of January. So because of that though, not long, so because of that, only for about 9 days to go at this point. And in addition to that, there's also going to be, I think there was actually a 3-movie collection about the forms of the Trolls film series kind of thing about it, which is also going to be releasing until on the 22nd of January, believe it or not. So, which obviously does contains, you know, the first film, the second film, and especially noticeable with the recent third one. So, yeah, I honestly have no idea why that Trolls is actually going to get a lot more popular these days. Mind you, no matter what though, we have not seen any of those movies because they are not my cup of tea. At least in my opinion, because we much rather seeing, you know what I'm gonna say, Kung Fu Panda 4, and eventually at some point that we might able to see some interesting DreamWorks movies for time to time, until specifically in the future, because as it turns out, that one thing that Ray the Flying Squirrel, including buddy forms of Sonic and Knuckles, both have completely forgotten to mention about throughout the course of the forms of certain playthroughs so far, with Super Mario Bros. Wonder, alongside with Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze. As it turns out, that there was actually that particular film called Boo, Boira of Worldly Operations. As it turns out, that particular film is now becoming reality. So because of that, I almost assumed that particular film did eventually became cancelled, but as it turns out, it's still going to be resumed production. So because of that, and eventually at some point is that particular film is going to be releasing in also in this year in 2024. Although kind of thinking about it though, Silver, is that it looks like we're about to come across into not only 1, but 4 DreamWorks movies in journey films of 2024. So no matter what though, is about the fact that we're able to actually come across into Orion and the Dark, Kung Fu Panda 4, The Wild Robots, and finally Boo. So yeah, pretty crazy to able to have multitude of DreamWorks movies is about to be on the horizon for the sake of the films of 2024. So yeah, it's pretty crazy, you know. Yeah, tell me about it. Especially concerning no matter what though, the last time we actually watched something related to DreamWorks was back in the films event technically in last year, where basically though we somehow managed able to went to see the Superior Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, just because the visual presentation looks amazing, and on top of that, about the fact that I just enjoy every single aspect about the films of Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, despite the fact that that particular film did originally came out in 2022, but for whatever reason in the UK version has to wait a little bit longer, so because of that, usually for the sake of the films of roughly about 2 months or so, so yeah, it seems kind of weird to say the least, but still. But anyways, we're back into this boss micro game again, but this time with young Cricket, so as a result, we've once again accomplished this no problem, so no mistakes there. Although, if you managed able to let one of those creatures get caught, you obviously failed the micro game, so oh, it looks like we come across into this bonus stage right here, where basically, though, certain cash has been come out of the forms of those cannons, so yeah, that's all there is to really think about it, so anyways, though, in terms of another thing I would like to say about this at this point in time, is that, potentially speaking though, is that it looks like when it comes to forms of something new is about to be coming up at some point on next month, specifically 19th of February in this year in particular for 2024, I would say Beverly Hills Cop 3 movie collection is coming on 4K Ultra HD Blu-ray at some point until next month. The reason being for this is because the first film of the films of the Beverly Hills Cop is going to be celebrating 40 years for this year. So because of that, although I do remember the first film is actually really good and iconic, whilst I feel like the second film, along with the third film, just feels a bit kind of lackluster in my opinion. Well, it's just mainly because no matter what though, they attempt able to have some interesting ideas, but at the same time though, it's about the fact that they did manage to bring up some of those rehashed moments from time to time. But apart from those aside things though, is about the fact that it's pretty cool to appreciate able to celebrate the 40th anniversary of that particular, the first film of the films of the Beverly Hills Cop. So yeah, that's all I can really say about it. But regardless of everything else though, is about the fact you do realize about the fact that what this boss micro game is actually called, by the way, for the sake of the films of the fantasy stage. As it turns out, it was actually called Poseidon. So yeah, basically though, is about the fact that we need to save those little fairies, so that's what they call it. So yeah, if you let the fairies get caught, then obviously you failed the micro game. So it's why I classify that. Yeah, I suppose that might seems to be the case. So anyway, in terms of another thing I should probably want to mention about is that it looks like that Cosmic Fantasy Collection is going to be confirmed to be released in the West, and it's also going to be worth noting for is that the physical release is about to be confirmed. So yeah, it seems pretty cool and substantial at the same time. Well, we're not exactly sure when does it going to be releasing exactly in the West, but I'm sure we'll find out more details about that until specifically the next couple of days' time. So oh, and another thing is worth noting for as well, Pac-Man, is that until by that time, until specifically also in next month, that I found out that The Prince of Egypt, the musical, on DVD and Blu-ray is also coming. So as a result, it's going to be releasing until the 12th of February in 2024. Oh gee, that reminds me, because that's going to be roughly around that time where basically though, that will able to actually became released until the exactly same week as our special occasion for our the Mexi Toys YouTube channel department. So yeah, that does seems pretty cool. So even then though, yeah, for the most part, that's all I can say about the films of the updated DVD release dates in mind. Well, apart from the fact that particular point where have you guys ever heard about the films of the Nickelodeon series called Drake and Josh? Basically, I believe that particular comedy show has recently became 20 this year. So, never heard of it, but I've never actually got interested with that to begin with. Well, that's just mainly because we're pretty much used to with Disney stuff, or every nowadays with Mario and Sonic stuff. So because of that, who knows when it comes to likely trying to able to celebrate the film's the 20th anniversary of that particular comedy simcoms or anything else like that. But either way though, who knows about that. So, and it looks like we somehow, oh jeez, we somehow messed this up. But regardless of such though, Pac-Man, is that, kind of think about it, we did somehow manage to able to complete all 3 levels of that particular, well, the boss micro game, no problem. Because here's the thing, that particular boss micro game that we've already done for about 3 times, or approximately 4 times up to this point, is overall ridiculously easy, just because no matter what though, assuming if you know what you're doing, and we've stopped at the forms of 52 points, but that's okay, because we were able to get ourselves some even more coins, so that should be all pretty swell. So, it looks like for the most part, we did somehow manage to able to guard every single micro games in Fantasy. So, at the very least, we've got that. Thanks to the forms of the mission complete, notification did pop up. So, yeah, as I said before, if you see that mission complete notification, every time when you proceed to the forms of, you know, trying to unlock certain micro games, this actually signifies that you've actually got every single micro games in one of the catalogs. So, yeah, I suppose that was about it for Dribble and Spitz stage. So, yeah, pretty cool, and yeah, too easy to able to actually get those micro games sometimes, but either way, so that's it for that. So let's move on to the next stage, and that's what appears to be remakes. Oh, this looks familiar. Especially, I think something tells me we might as well able to play some previous micro games based off in the forms of not only, let's just say, Mono stage, as well as the forms of 9-volt stage and Dr. Crykle stage, and of course Dribble and Spitz stage. So it looks like we're about to take a minecart ride. So yeah, I kind of figured about it though, Silver. It does kind of remind me of a similar vibes, as technically speaking, for the sake of Donkey Kong Country, except we're not in a platformer. Instead, we have to able to go through cinematic, in-game text cutscenes from time to time. Oh, what do we have here? We have Mike. Well, it doesn't take us that long to able to actually figure out for that particular music notes from earlier ago. So, yeah, it looks like something tells me we're about to persuade to play as Mike in remix stage. So, yeah, as for Mike, as far as for that particular playable character is concerned, he's also pretty awesome, especially that he moves pretty much exactly like the forms of Dribble and Spitz, although the noticeable differences being, as you can see, that he can only shoot upwards for his mouth. So because of that, he can able to shoot projectiles upwards. So I will say the actual movement is really good for the sake of the forms of Mike. So, but either way, not much else to say about the forms of Mike. And as far as I'm aware, when it comes to the forms of the remakes types of stages, much like the forms of how it does it on, let's say, if I recall correctly, since WarioWare Smooth Moves, this will be only one playthrough for the sake of the forms of remake stages, because, well, I was attempting to able to complete one of the missions, because yes, this game does have missions system, which I think we already know this at this point, but I don't usually care about the forms of missions too much, apart from the fact that I just want to show you guys every single micro games has to offer, and especially noticeable just to show you guys certain content of how this game actually has to offer. So anyway, so here we go, onto the forms of the remake stage, and wow, we got into a pretty bad start. So, well, that's just mainly because no matter what though, Pac-Man, we did somehow manage to able to choose not only Dr. Crygor, but also with 18 volts, and of course, like I said before, we are persuaded able to actually just to play as Mike in this particular stage, but that's okay, because Mike is cool, especially considering for the fact that, well, he's obviously a little bit more easy to control, at least to me anyway. So, well, time to boot up the GameCube again. But except the fact that the actual sound pitching just sounds a bit too weird, I will admit that right away. But regardless of everything else though, I would say this particular remake stage is pretty self-explanatory, but as you can tell, no matter what though, we have to go through a serious amount of those micro games until you're able to actually complete any of those remake stages. So because of that, because like I said before, I believe the remake stages are entirely based off from certain micro games we've already played through since entering any forms within the previous stages. So yeah, that's as far as I can usually just try to able to understand for that particular solution. So, but either way though, that's enough about that particular topic. There's also another thing I want to mention about this as well. It looks like that Hi-Fi Rush has been rated on the Nintendo Switch in Australia so far. yeah, I've no idea what that's about exactly, but then again, we'll find out some more details about that. Presumably speaking though, is that I do know right from the get-go, is that it may look like we're about to be getting the next, or should I say, the first Nintendo Direct in 2024 at some point until next month, because I don't think there's a possibility for the sake of the films of this month, so it looks like we're going back into the exactly same pattern as the films of how it does it since in 2019, all the way up to last year in 2023, so I get the strong sense of feeling it might once again take place in sometime in February in this year, so that's why I get the feeling about this particular exact same pattern, so alright, so here we go onto the boss stage in Remake stage, and let's see what stage are we going to go into. Oh boy, we're going back to Super Mario World again. And it's a good thing too, is that as you can tell, we're now in level 3 course. So because of that, yeah, it does manage to take place in a castle or fortress level. So obviously, no matter what though, is that we need to avoid a lot of those hazards, ranging from these little spike pillars, and also plotterboos, and of course, swamps. So, but this will be a piece of cake, because obviously we've already experienced this, even though the only time we only messed up on, it was in level 2 portion, because obviously the hitbox might be a little bit too big for my liking, but who cares, because obviously this boss micro game to me is awesome. So it's also really easy though, unlike the future one that we'll probably have to save that particular topic until specifically later down the road. Well, to be more accurate though, Silver, is that potentially speaking though until next week that we will save that particular topic. So yeah, sing it indeed, Mike. So anyway, so that pretty much does it for Remakes stage, and as soon as we're done with the first portion of the Films of Story mode, we can now continue proceedings up to this point, and it looks like the next stage we'll come across into, and that's what appears to be none of it then, well, if I get my controller up, so, although I do need to able to charge it, so in some cases though, yeah, I did somehow charge it, so even then though, yeah, not much else to say about the Films of the Remake stage, but like we said this before, this is only going to be one-time playthrough on these kinds of stages like this, especially because, well, we just want to see how the story proceeds, so that's the only real solution about this, I guess. So, anyways, let's move on to Nature, starring Kat and Anna, in some cases these two duo ninja warriors. So, yeah, I'm curious to know about the forms of how these stages going to play out to be, and as you can see, the actual player counter is now actually increased up to 4, so we no longer stick around with the forms of 3, so I get the strong feeling we're now going to be playing as 4 characters, at least depending on what stage we go into. So yeah, let's just check out the forms of Kat and Anna for Nature. So it looks like we might as well come across into certain micro games based off from animals, nature environments, as well as anything else potentially. So, and it looks like that both Kat and Anna are constantly jumping, so yeah, I just get a strong feeling about the fact that they're almost acting like Tigger, well, except no matter what though, they are both ninjas, so. And also something tells me as well, that much like the forms of how it does it for Dribble and Spitz, obviously one player can take control of Kat, and then whilst player 2 can take control of Anna. Although they both played identically to each other, except the only differences being is the actual specific ninja stars you're going to be able to be throwing at. So, or shuriken, whatever you want to call it. So because of that though, Kat can only shoot the shuriken to the right, whilst for Anna, she can only shoot to the left, so yeah, pretty similar in structure for the sake of the forms of Dribble and Spitz. So I think that's as far as we can able to say about the forms of them two. So, however, I will admit though right away, is that Kat and Anna is actually pretty difficult to control with these two, because obviously if you couldn't tell, they are both jumping constantly. So because of that, well, we got able to stick around with those two for now, for the sake of their stage. So, as for the character choice though, we'll go for Mike, and we'll go for Dribble, and I think potentially speaking though, we'll go for Mona as well. So because of that, yeah, I think this should be all set when it comes to the forms of the character selection. So let's get to it with Kat and Anna, Nature. No, unlike the ones and how it does it in WarioWare Gold, where basically though is about the fact that both Cat and Nana are so obsessed with food, whilst in here this time around though, as you can tell from that intro cutscene of that particular stage, it looks like we actually come across into a different threat this time around. And as it turns out, his name was Leo. So, no wonder why that Leo was able to try to turn people into wild animals and stuff like that. Well, I suppose no matter what though, it's about the fact that, well, this is actually the first time ever that we're able to see Leo for the sake of the forms of what he does. So because of that, hopefully we should stop his schemes and all that stuff. So because of that though, nothing else to really say about this, I guess. So anyways, there's also another thing I want to mention about this, is that potentially speaking though, we actually got ourselves some new information just happened, as well as a new short trailer for the sake of the forms of the Mario vs. Donkey Kong remake recently. And because of that, not only does it show off some more features, to be more specifically with an easier difficulty, specifically casual mode, and on top of that there's also going to be a time attack mode, and also there's going to be not one but 2 new worlds is actually going to be introduced in that remake. So because of that, those 2 worlds are Merry Miniland and Slippery Summons, at least as far as I definitely noticed from the description for it. Like, one of the worlds is actually going to take place in somewhat of a carnival setting, and another world is going to take place in a snowy environment. Very similar to the forms of how it does it for Iceberg World from the likes of Donkey Kong 94. So at the very least, it's actually pretty cool to be able to see those 2 worlds in action. So making a grand total so far anyway, in regards to the forms of the Mario vs. Donkey Kong remake, as far as we can able to realize, is that that particular remake is going to feature 8 worlds to traverse. So, and also not to mention though, Pac-Man, is that from what I've noticed on the Japanese website, or to be more specifically, on certain websites that has been recently updated, that it looks like we're about to come across into 130 stages in that remake. So, yeah, it seems gonna be pretty jam-packed full of levels as far as I'm aware. So here we go, onto a boss micro game in terms of Cat and Nana stage in nature, and it looks like we're about to be doing a safari tour. Well, as it turns out, no matter what though, think of like the forms of the memory quiz from the likes of Mario Party 6, except obviously we have to go through 3 questions, and you have to answer them, all of them, and you have to answer them correctly from all of them. And then when you get the question wrong, then you have to try again. So because of that, however, it's all about memorization. So because of that though, you have to remember of what's going on. So anyway, so the giraffes is on the water. And you have to be quick about it too, so just in case you don't want to be too slow. So but relatively speaking, this particular boss micro game is also pretty super duper easy. So assuming if you know what you're doing. And then once you've done all 3 questions, well, congratulations, you've won. Yeah, pretty self-explanatory. So, in some cases though, yeah, it looks like that Leo is turned into a good old lion, of all things. And that was about it for the sake of the forms of nature. So, overall not too shabby, despite that the actual specific abilities for both Cat and Nana just feels a bit mixed on, as far as I was going to say for this point. So we did it. Mission complete. So yeah, pretty cool. However though, that doesn't stop there, because obviously we need to go back into that stage again, just in case we can able to find some more micro games. So anyway, so just like the forms of how it does it for 9-Volt, as well as Dr. Kroigor and Dribble and Spitz, we actually come across into 3 more stages, which one of them is actually familiar, and then the other 2 are also very familiar as well. So because of that, yeah, it looks like that we might as well see Jimmy T, alongside with the forms of Orbulon and Ashley. So because of that, hopefully we'll save them for the sake of the forms of tomorrow, at least depending on what stage we're about to go into next time. So for now, let's go back onto nature stage again, but this time we'll go for a different character combination, specifically Wario, Cricket, and also we might also bring along Dr. Kroigor, and finally 9-Volt. So that should be all set. So yeah, it's actually pretty cool about the fact that it looks like we're about to be getting some new content now for the sake of Mario vs. Donkey Kong Remake now. And it's especially noticeable, it's a good thing we did somehow pre-order that game, especially concerning for the fact that we were able to get 2 new worlds that was not found in the original version on the Game Boy Advance. So, pretty cool, huh? And of course, much like defaults of how it does in the original version of the game, obviously though, it's about the fact that they're still going to be featuring Plus mode, and especially noticeable with the Expert mode levels, as far as I'm aware. However, this time around though, I've noticed about the fact that, according to the defaults of the website, that it might actually contain 16 Expert stages this time around. So, yeah, it seems pretty crazy, kind of thinking about it. I think this is going to be something to do with the forms of the other 2 worlds they're going to be featured onto, like, you know, Merry Miniland, as well as the forms of Slippery Serpent, or Shermant, or anything else like that. So, yeah, that's what I was expecting for it. So, because of that. And, I suppose the last thing I want to mention about the forms of today's topic at this point is that, well, honestly guys, there's nothing I can say about this, apart from the fact that for one noticeable thing alone, is that it looks like both Felix the Cat and Rocket Knight are both going to be re-releases. It's about to be coming on a Nintendo Switch for the sake of the forms of the forms of limited run games. So, for instance, is that we're about to be getting Felix the Cat Collection, and of course, not to mention though, there's also going to be Rocket Knight Adventures Re-Sparked Collection. So because of that, pretty interesting compilation games is about to be releasing, and not just by the forms of the Nintendo Switch, but also with the forms of multiple platforms as well. Like for instance with the PlayStation 4, as well as PlayStation 5, and that is it. So no Xbox releases or something. So kind of strange though, but regardless of such though, it is pretty cool to see how those 2 compilation games are definitely gonna be coming. So, well, only for a limited time though, that's the thing, Pac-Man, just because since it was actually gonna be part of the forms of limited run games, that means it's about the fact it will have a short lifespan or something like that. So, anyways, here we go, back onto the forms of Safari Tour, but this time with the forms of Dr. Krygor. So, in fact, kind of thinking about it though, is about the fact that I could imagine about the fact that if we ever come across into level 2 or level 3 variant for the sake of the forms of this boss micro game, it will get a little bit more difficult. So, but honestly though, Silver is about the fact that whenever I manage to play this game on my own time for a bit, when it comes to the forms of, oh, and by the way, something's worth noting for, WarioWare getting together decided able to bring back the points required system. However, it might look a bit more differently this time around though, because, well, we'll save that particular topic once we're able to complete the entire story mode first. So, all in all, we succeed. Nicely done right there, without losing a single life so far for the sake of the forms of the second run through. So, and since we're now onto the bonus stage, basically we have to bust out these bubbles and we can able to grab some more coins from there. So, seriously, we have not even spent that many coins so far anyway. Well, mind you, Pac-Man, is probably because we pretty much used to the forms of certain micro games up to this point at some form or another, but either way. Oh, and another thing too is about the fact that yes, we did somehow manage able to win to see Sonic Prime Season 3, and I'm gonna say, I absolutely love every single aspect of it. In fact, my favorite part of that particular third season, as far as I'm aware, well, spoiler alert for those who have not seen it already, I love the Sonic Advance 3 reference there, especially concerning for the fact that, well, despite the sprites might look a bit slightly iffy at some point, but regardless of such though, let me tell you, is that I just love the actual Sonic Advance 3 reference. Like, you get like Sunset Hill, and on top of that, there's also technically a brief cameo for the sake of the forms of Gemerol or Gemerol, more like. So, yeah, that's actually super dope and everything. So because of that, that was easily the greatest part in terms of the forms of Season 3 to me, for the sake of the forms of Sonic Prime. So, and if you're probably wondering, is there going to be the 4th season? Well, I'm probably not going to mention about any other spoilers for the time being, just because, well, it's the most recent series after all, so... But, for the most part though, I think I've decided able to take a break on using, Netflix, for right now. Well, that's just mainly because, at this point in time, I'm gonna be busy playing some other games, like, dang it, I did not realize I have to scare the snakes, not just by the forms of some other animals. I mean, I didn't pay attention to it at all, and thus, to me, that 9-volt is kind of feels a bit tricky to control, especially because you have to be a lot of, you know, trying to able to get a lot of usage on timing, so... Well, so far so good. Well, at least we got able to... Oh, jeez, that was close. At least we've almost there to level 2, but... Oh, don't tell me. Yeah, we failed. Oh, jeez. But at the very least, we stopped at 29, and I get the horrible feeling we are off by one more microgame left for that particular nature catalog, so... Oh, please don't tell me that's gonna be the case, just like Nintendo Classics. Yep, we are off by one microgame again. So that pretty much leads us to 2 microgames we are currently missing on. So, I suppose we'll have to able to try to sort this out off screen. Well, eventually once we've finished up the entire story mode first. That's the only key factor about it, because otherwise, if we decide to do that before story mode is over, it'll make things a little bit more disorientating for the sake of the forms of how this recording setup is gonna be able to be proceeded on. So, yeah, for the most part though, I actually do like, this particular stage though, but it's just kind of unfortunate that we are once again missing that particular micro game. So, but then again, we'll try to able to go for that for off screen, I guess. So, I suppose with that being said though, is that we got the endings of this point right here. So join us next time for more of Let's Play of WarioWare Get It Together. Specifically until tomorrow, is that we can either decide able to go for Ashley, Jimmy T, or Orbulon. I think, at this point, we'll go for Ashley first, in Journey forms of the food catalog. So I'll see you guys until tomorrow. Later, fellas.